Got it. Thank you for that.
Time is it? Yep, it's 8 o'clock. So people will start joining. We'll edit the recording from the beginning part as well.
Okay, I got
Uh,
it. Thank you.
yeah, I'm letting people in. I would just not let in the note takers because it's going to mess with the recording. I don't know
Mhm.
how to. I don't know how to get rid of them. Hold on. I don't know how to get rid of them. I can usually get rid of them on my computer, but I don't know how to do it on this. Uh,
Yeah, got you. Well, don't worry about that. We can just go ahead without that. So even if I don't think that should be a concern on my end.
yeah, I would normally give it. You give it like 5 minutes if you need to
Mhm.
join. Oh, wow. I am tired.
Likewise, I definitely feel like outside had gotten beautiful. So I've seen a lot of people stepping outside a lot more. So, boy.
Yeah.
Any highlight for you for this week?
Huh?
Any highlight for you for this week?
Oh yeah, no, my daughter got had her award ceremony today. So she's had straight A's all year. So she got those special awards. And then she did the Pledge of Allegiance, which I never let her do, but she did the Pledge of Allegiance in Mandarin.
Is there like a
Did the
secret
whole
as
thing
to
in
why?
Mandarin in front of everybody. So
Mandarin? That's crazy. Okay, that's pretty cool. I mean, it's been a minute since I've done my Pledge of Allegiance, so I can't believe if I have to do it in Mandarin. I'm like, damn. Like,
yeah. So
yeah.
that was cool. And then we put up our we finally announced our guests for my festival, Raji today. So that's been getting some good traction. It's been a good day, but it's a really long, like mentally exhausting day.
Hmm.
But good nonetheless.
Okay. No, that sounds like
Uh,
fun. I mean, I'm happy for you. That's a lot of success coming your way. So big up to you.
thanks. Yeah, no, it's cool. I'm excited. Last day of school, so I don't got to get up super early anymore.
Hmm. Hello, guys. Welcome in. I see
Hi,
everybody coming in.
everybody.
We're gonna give it like 2 more minutes before people
I
start
mean,
coming
that's up
in.
to you if you want to.
Yeah, I can definitely get the ball rolling just in a minute. So,
Okay. All right. Oh, I would just say, like, be sure to just pay attention to the waiting room. Like I said, I'll pop back on while I'm driving, but we're wrapping up dinner now.
got you. Okay, cool.
Okay.
Well, I can get it started right now, but thank you for that.
Okay. I'll be back.
I just need your request to record it though.
Huh?
It's asking me to for you to give me permission to record it.
I'm already recording it.
Cool, perfect.
Oh wait, try it. I'm gonna hang up and try it again. It should allow you to record on its own.
Okay.
All right.
Well, let's get the party started. Thank you guys for coming in. Um, so for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Nekwan. This is my first time doing something like this. I've hosted before, but this is the first time I've done something for the One Entrepreneur. And so I'm just gonna start it off with a presentation. But to first introduce myself, my name is Nekwan. I am a brand designer, brand strategist. So I've worked for a lot of agencies, in-house marketing team, as well as other smaller companies. But one of the best thing that I've been able to do is work with founders that look just like us. And I just want to start off by saying thank you for taking the opportunity out of your day. I know every day it's getting warmer and warmer, so everybody want to be outside at the moment. So I just want to see where people are coming from, what state, what city, where you can put it in the chat. I would love to see what city, what neighborhood you guys are representing in the chat. Okay, I see a lot of people from DC, Atlanta. Perfect. So can everybody see my screen right now? You should see something that say cultivating a Latin brand. Let me know in the chat. Cool, cool, perfect. So, like I said before, my name is Nekwan Luke. I have 7+ years working for agency in-house marketing team. You might heard of Masterclass, Samsung, some of these companies where I work on branding and all things design system. So essentially what I've done is being able to help founder clarify their brand vision and translate it into compelling visuals. So a lot of things that we're going to talk about is really start to think about how we can view branding and really start to differentiate ourselves from our competition. So what today's conversation is going to really be about, it's not a design workshop or a marketing tutorial, but instead just to figure out like what decision that we can make to influence buying decision. And just to start off, we're going to talk about the first agenda versus brand versus business. And one of the things that people often get mistaken with brand versus business is that um, the branding is pretty much one and synonymous at the same as business, whereas it's not. I would also say it's adjacent to it, but not necessarily the same, one and the same as when we think about branding. Can anybody can give me an example like what branding is before we dive into it? I'm not seeing the chat yet, but yeah, so a logo, a color scheme versus the whole product or service. Correct. So what one thing I've discovered in my career is many wine entrepreneurs are clear on the business, but unclear on the brand. So what business is what you do, is pricing, sale, distribution. Brand is who you are, why you matter, what people feel, the emotional hook. So in one essence, the business is owned by the founders, CEOs, stakeholders, etc. But the brand is owned by the consumers. And so the consumer control the decision or at least the impact that the business will have. So that's one way to differentiate the two between that. Let me expand this out. So one thing to look at it as people don't buy product, they buy story, emotion, identity. What is a brand? A customer, audience, um, or people that respond to your products, the service company influencing your decision. Another way is to think about a brand that is a unique name, symbol, or design that distinguish a product or service from others. So it is more than just a logo or name. It's the brand perception or the customer's perception of a product or business, including the feeling and association that we would have interacting with that. And one way we can always think about it is like just seeing how the iceberg look. you can see that the brand identity, whether we look at the logo, we look at the color palette, whatever the case is, that's what we see on the top of the iceberg. But underneath that, we have something that people don't really look at, the brand strategy. Can anybody like determine what the ratio out of maybe if you want to split it up 40, 60, 50%, 50, 50, what would you give brand identity, brand strategy? Like what percent would you give both side for the visible side and invisible side in the chat? Don't be shy. Okay, I see 60% identity, uh, 40% for strategy. Okay, 70% brand, uh, 30% strategy. Okay. Well, the truth is 20% brand identity, which is the strategy, which is the surface that we all see, and the brand strategy is typically 80%. I always, some people might argue with me on this, but the logo is literally like 10% of what you see in the brand, in the world of branding. And part of the problem for that is because everything that we do is influencing not just the way we respond to it, but the emotion that we are getting from that. So the brand identity is the visual component of what people remember at first glance, like the first 8 seconds, but it's really what the strategy that allows us to have a clear and unique, distinctive positioning in the heart of consumer. And it's just really create an emotional connectivity with people that we're interacting with. So oftentimes when we think about the brand identity, we have to look at the emotional side that comes with that and how we interact with people when we build in brand identity or branding. So there are also three ways that we also have to look out for is when we say we are a brand, that is the company itself or your personal brand. But when we talk about branding, it's really essentially what houses brand identity and brand strategy. So sometimes the language can get confusing, but always try to remember like when we think of brand, it composed of two things, brand identity and brand strategy. So when we think about brand identity, we think of the logos, the name, the color palette, the typeface, website, marketing collaterals. We go into the specific thing that go for the wine brand, some of the things that really composed of that. But it also for the brand strategy, we have naming, offering, competition, the differentiation, the idea, customer persona, story, voice tone, archetype, mission, visions. So all of these different things are so crucial. And if you guys, I know I'll probably have like an hour to, you can screenshot it. Go ahead, feel free to do so. We got a lot of slides to go through, but essentially to keep in mind that when we think about what branding is, it's a lot different than what the business is. So we have business strategy versus brand strategy, two different things. So the business strategy oftentimes goes for what the business intends to do with the business model, where the brand strategy is intended to determine how our consumer, our audience view us, and how do we shape our businesses to that lens to how they see us. So for one brand, some of the things that we think about is logo, label design, body shape, social media aesthetic, personality. There's so many of these things that really make up the one brand. And those are some of the things that we really have to think about. And there may be more out there, that's okay. But some of these things are very crucial as to how we see the icebergs. So how do we see things above the line, and how do we also see things that people don't see automatically? What are the emotional connection that we are creating for people around us? So we're going to talk about brand pillars, what make a strong wine brand. So with that, like, what are the core component of a strong brand? Do anybody in the chat know 3 to 5 words that you believe that's essential to building a memorable brand that could really like think about what the brand is? Does anybody have like 3 to 5 words in the chat that they know what can make up the brand, or at least what the brand pillars? maybe. I see good story, mission, great customer service, doing what you say you would do. So that part right there, like called brand promise. So doing what you say you would do, brand promise. Defining the why, what the brand is, basic anything like it. True. So cool. So those are some of the brand pillars that we have. But in essence, what we call them is purpose, positioning, personality, voice, messaging, value, audience, identity. There's a lot more, but these are the crucial ones that exist out there. Now, we're not going to go through all of them, but we are going to focus on three things that really that anchor every great brand, or at least the brand that you want to get behind. We have purpose, positioning, and personality. And so some of the things that we're going to talk about, we're going to break down how we can view purpose, how we're going to view positioning, personality, what the definition of it, and even this example and reflection question that we can think of for each of these anchors. Purpose, what drives you beyond the sale, that's your emotional core. And so purpose is really like when we think about mission statement, statements usually determine what your company is driven to do and how do you proceed to accomplish that mission. It literally help your audience feel something bigger behind the bottle. So in this case, when we're talking about wine brand, like are we honoring our culture, our legacy, or are we creating assets, or are we redefining who wine is for? Uh, the definition is really simple as this: the meaningful reason why your business exists, the impact that you want to make in your community, culture, industry, what people really feel connected and believe in your mission. The specific example of that is it could be to celebrate joy, connection, and culture over a glass. It could be to be able to make sure that wine is accessible for everybody. It could be we want to celebrate the Black heritage and storytelling. So some of the questions that we should be thinking about when we think about mission statement or brand purpose is like, why do we start our wine brand? And if our brand disappeared today or even tomorrow, what would people miss about it? Or what cause or culture that you stand behind? Positioning statement is your space in the market and that allow people to remember who you are and you have a hold in their mind. And so it's the positioning statement you can see it's not just positioning, but it can also mean positioning statement. But it's really what differentiates yourself from your competition and how people view you. And maybe your competitor feel like they do the same thing too, but there's something emotionally, maybe there's something visually, or maybe there's something that you have a brand promise that you stand on that allow you to be different from your competition. So when it comes to like a wine brand, we know it's not enough to be a black owned. We know it's not enough to just feel natural. Those are some of the words that being redundant. Those are some of the things that we got to understand that it's much more than those words, but to create a unique place in your customer mind that nobody else occupied. And so it's crucial to think about that. So the positioning that we like what I talk about, why you, why now, why does it matter? One example that we always have is sparkling water that is black owned and a black owned woman brand in the Northeast. There's even also a black tequila. Even though we're talking about wine, there is a black tequila based in DC. I'm not the greatest with pronunciation, but I forgot the name of the brand. Uh, Also, just think about like natural wine that is clean, affordable, and made for Gen Z first timer. So these are some of the different ways you can think about how brand positioning is. So the question that you can think about is to reflect on what positioning statement or your positioning in the marketplace. What do you do? What gap do you fill in the wine marketplace? Like, what does your ideal customer want that everybody else overlooked? And I'm gonna give you example visually to see what that look like for anybody. The three and the third one in personality, how your brand behave and sound. That essentially is like what is it's basically look at it as a human side. Are you playful, refined, bold? It affects everything from how you write to how your strategy sounds to your color palette and so on. So these are some of the things that everybody should really, really think about. So these three things, as you build a business or as you once you get past having a repeatable business model, you don't have to answer every brand pillars. As I mentioned, it's far beyond eight brand pillars, but perfect positioning and personality. These are the things that the compact that you really want to focus on that guide you to everywhere you go. So the next part is really think about like again, like some of these examples, Mason Noor, Brown Estate. What would your brand play off if it's playful, poetic, earthy, sexy, gritty? So again, if your brand was a person, what would their vibe be? So this is the part where we start to think about like if our brand, how do we personify our brand? And I'm for the sake of time, you could put it in the chat, like what three adjectives to describe as if it was a person. If you have a brand or if you're working on a brand currently, what would the three adjectives to describe as if it was a person? I'm going to continue on, but you can put it in the chat, three adjectives to describe as if it was a person. These are some of the example of wine that it would be sparkling rosé, flirty, energetic, fun. Sour, bold, earthy, sensual. Chardonnay, polished, classy, classic, sophisticated, and so forth on. Now, it may all depend on what the backstory, the meaning behind your brand, where did it come from, where did you have to grow your product, etc. So maybe you feel like your personality may be a little bit different to Chardonnay or something of that magnitude. And so that's one way you can look about how you can view personality. What if you're telling a story and you have to figure out what your brand strategy is? So one of the ways that I would always tell people to think about is if we want to think about brand strategies, let's look let's look at an example like the McBride Sister Collection. I'm not sure if you guys seen this brand before, but I'm sure you guys have. It's in DC, so they were well known in other places as well. I might be wrong in that. It might not be in DC, but why this works is not only because they're Black woman owned, but they built on a deeply personal sisterhood story. These are two sisters, Robin and Andrea, raised on the opposite side of the world, California and New Zealand. They were reunited in adulthood, bonded through wine, and built a brand around sisterhood, heritage, and accessibility. They built some of these brands where you can see that they became the first Black woman sister duo to found a wine company in the United States, and they also produced some of their wine in the world's first carbon zero winery. So you can see why their strategies start to become successful because they have an idea. And remember, every business is start off as an idea, and from that idea, become much more greater. So one of the things they wanted to do is to break down the barrier in an industry that wasn't built for them. And so how do we make it more inclusive, accessible, and reflective of Black women and culture? And again, it's not just Black owned, but a Black woman centered on community first. Affordability for luxury feel, they're confident, unapologetic about it. Black Girl Magic Wine, a very popular wine that I've gotten the chance to enjoy it, but it exemplifies celebration and representation. She can, another part of the collection, convenient and empowerment. So even just the McBride Sister Collection, with that, it's just so many ways that they can think about like their purpose and positioning, and their personality is empowerment, refined, joyful. Their messaging feel like a toast. It's always thinking about ways where their visual identity across all of their sub brand versus the Black Girl Magic and She Can. You can see that there's the connection between their font, their gold accent. the bold photography. So it's always to think about like how they can just not just build one brand, but a system of other things that each has their own voice and is rooted in one clear purpose representation. Now, there are some more examples of that. This is not related to the wine industry, but it is adjacent to it. Bear Girls. Anybody who want to see other examples that rebellious, bold, loud, Bear Girl is really one of the first brands out there that created a bear that tailored for women. Um, Again, bear is a male-dominated industry, and so from the conversation that a lot of people have about bears, bears is bitter. It doesn't taste like a part of their taste palette. It always feel like it's not a clean taste. So the founder decided to create a brand that centered around women and such a culture that revolve around gatekeeping. So they created a product that really touched the color palette. And I remember when it first came out, there was so much people that would having feel against it. I was for it because why would that stop me from drinking beer? I mean, I drink wine. Some people might argue that wine is dominated by women, but I drink it. The essence of it is really how do we create a market segment that doesn't exist? And that was their positioning. Because it's one thing to say, you know what, it's not there, so maybe there isn't a need, but they saw it as an opportunity to be able to say, you know what, let's create a product for women. It's a beer for women. Another one, a True Local Brewing, based in Philadelphia. I should have mentioned that earlier. This is the True Local Brewing is the first Black-owned brewery in Philadelphia. It's not only that they are Black-owned by the guys. I got the chance to meet them, but they also want to raise the next generation of brewers. That's a big deal because we don't see a lot of Black-owned brewery in Philadelphia or let alone the whole country. So for them to be able to raise the next generation of brewers, that is not only just going to it's not only going to echo to their brand visually, but also to their positioning and how they view certain things. So their voice soulful, honest, community rooted, but also make sure that the beer is reflected in the people, the story of the city. And so you can see how they tend to think about their product, think about certain things. And not only just that, but also think about like how do you want to represent yourself and show up. Now, next part is to always think about like your brand is not just a logo, but it's also your voice, the vibe, the vision that you put into every label, your name, and every narrative that's out there about the brand so people can interact with it. So since we talk about like the strategy, it's also time to think about like aligning your design to your strategy. Um, I'm gonna give you some example of how we can think about how the design is aligned with the branding visual. I mean, how the design is aligned with the strategy. And understand that when we talk about your brand identity, we are just looking at the logo, color palette, and the label design. Those things are dope to have, but they are meant to be strategic tools that express everything about your brand identity, your voice, your value, and your vibe. So always try to look at it as the design and the result, but not the starting point. So we're gonna use this brand as an example visually. This is the project by Jose. The name of the brand is called Sector Abismo. Um, and we're gonna talk about like this from the strategy to the design. So I want to know from the chat how many brand components can we see in this image? Like it could be one, five, six, and this goes back to what we talked about earlier about the brand identity. It'd be like a one, two, three, four, five, whatever the number is. And just by looking at this picture, how many component of the brand component do you see? Some people say five. So what we see here is okay. I see three. It said lighting, three pop, the packaging. That I would say that speak more to the product side. I mean, when we talk about the brand identity, like are we talking about the logos, the all the visual component that you see visually? But first thing first, we see the logos. So that's what we meant by a brand component. So what you're referring to, Adrian, I'm not sure if I said your name right, but that's more on the product side. So if somebody, what you're referring to is the product side. But the first thing we see is the logo. And the next part that we see is the colors. So what we see, the colors are the black, the green, and the gray. They're all also white too, but white is pretty much a dominant color that always going to be used regardless. So white is never really a color that you should count on as one of the brand colors. We also see the typography. Like there are two different types that being used. So these two fonts are part of the typography family or the type family. We also see the label and illustration. So from it's not just the you can see that the logo is placed on a labeling material. Like the and then you also see the typography is also placed on a labeling. So two different type of labels on that. Oh, yeah, there's also one more. Even though I showcased you guys four, there's actually the whole brand photography. Brand photography is also one of the brand components. Like how do you interact with the brand and stuff? How do you interact with people that view the product side of things? So, so there's a question. So, would the photo also give us a vibe of the setting to drink this? Yes, it does. To that question, the brand photo is always a big component of how people can interact it. So let's just say you actually find the brand values. Like the brand value go back to the strategy that we talked about earlier. When we talk about like the mission, the vision statement, your positioning, your personalities, you will find after you complete your mission, your vision, you will find your value from that. The value can also just demonstrate, okay, what type of photo you will have. Eventually, when you start to get into your personality, what type of personality that you have, I'm gonna give two names out there, two brands that's not related to the fine wine and spirit industry, but Geico versus State Farm. Two different type of personality in how they interact with the world, the way people respond to it. So depending on what type of brand you're gonna create for your product, there's a certain vibe that you may want to introduce with the drink. So it's always important to figure out what your strategy is to determine the vibe of what your photo will look like. And that actually cut down a lot of time in working with a brand photographer because they have a brief or understanding what your branding look like. That's one of the best things you can do in working with a brand photographer or somebody that understand branding. Because they will feel like it's heaven sent to be able to work with you guys. Oh my God, I got a brief or I got a brand identity. And sometimes a little nugget, the more work you give them, the more they charge. I feel like that's so cliche, but the quicker that you can find way to cut down the time for them to execute a brand photo shoot, so easy. So when we talk about the logo for this brand, it basically there's a lot of historical content to this brand. One of the things I love about this band is the fact that there is it you can see that the bird is soaring upward to the moon sun hybrid, flanked by two stars. So what it suggested is transcendent, there's imagination, connection to cosmic cycle. And I'll show you a lot of references that they introduced into it. But the brand fit it really reflect on surrealism, fascination with dualities and symbolism. So again, this is the brand that look upward, inward, that look up, inward, and beyond the real. So it's almost like you being invited to transcend the ordinary suggesting that each sip is a step into a dreamlike experience. Um, so the color palette, how they showcase that is going back to what I mentioned before about the brand component. You see the green and you see the black. You're always gonna find white as a one of the colors. It may not be the main color, but it's always gonna be one of the colors. But you can see that the green and the black is pretty much a play on actual how they utilize the brand itself. So the colors is meant to convey a connection to nature and art. It reinforces the brand commitment to authenticity and creativity. So what you should be feeling is just like the previous picture is you see the background of how the Jose were able to create with the nature and having the earthy neutral deep green. So they showcasing the heritage or at least maybe what the culture indicate. Not everybody needs to play on culture, but it's what important to you. So there's a consistency which you will see among bottles, website, murals, merchandise. It's meant to ground the product in nature and tradition while avoiding flashy commercial cues. So the palette is meant to whisper the imagination. Again, going back to the topography, keeping it simple. Sometimes you see a lot of brands that play with too much font. Simplify it to 2 to 3. I would always say find one font that can allow you to be flexible. If you can find one more or maybe a, a secondary font that operate in a realm that allow you to go from packaging to a website, always make sure that you have a font that's flexible for not only for your packaging, but for your website, or and social media as well. But really, just to think about how the topography work is different font, different type is meant to serve different ways in connecting the Britain collectively. It's supposed to feel both vintage and handcrafted, like the sector abysmal. Another word I forgot to even mention that I believe the sector abysmal might be scent. I might be wrong about that, but that's the other meaning to that as well. But it reflects the dreamlike quality of surrealism while feeling rooted in magical artistic tradition. Um, it's meant to feel like it belongs on a film poster. And it's not just meant to be a bottle. Even the bottle is like that also play into a part what type of experience they're gonna have. Go, like what I mentioned about the bottle, like the bottle is part of the packaging. It's part of the experiences that you create. I know there's a lot of comment out there. It's like it doesn't matter what the product and service, it should be about the marketing. In the world of fine wine and spirit, the bottle is a crucial component of the experience that people will have in interacting it, whether they drink it, whether they taste it, whether they see it on the shelf and they're experiencing it and you're passing it and you see something that visual appealing, that plays a huge role in whether you experience it again if you want to decide to drink it again. And again, these characters have third eyes where you see panthers, staircases to nowhere. Um, it's referencing to a Leonora Torrington, and a Mexican surrealism that's a big part of their culture. So every bottle is supposed to tell a story without a single word. So the goal is to make sure there's art. It sells a narrative. It invite you to part look closer and question reality. That's exactly what surrealism was made for. A big part of their culture. And I'm gonna show you an example of the photography style, like going back to the question that was in the chat. Like again, the photography is meant to immerse the audience in the brand universe. There's the editorial style, then there's the almost quote unquote the commercial side, like thing that people can tolerate on a larger scale. I didn't talk about this earlier, but in the brand strategy, you also have um, the customer users or the user profile. So depending on what you're doing and creating, you might be responding to two different audiences. It might be responding to one person where the lawyer side of the the people that are committed to you no matter what. And you might be responding to the people that never heard of you, and you have to find a way to connect with them. And through them, you can be able to bring on the edgiest style. So there's so many different ways in creating a brand experience. But by looking at the image, it's meant to feel like it's a ritual or part of the Mexican culture, uh, whether it's like by moonlight, magical fire, like the creative director wanted to make sure it's not just a product, but it's also the experience that people have with that. So you can see that the design is meant to be moody, it's meant to have like a dramatic lighting or a surreal setting. It's very unique to that brand specifically. And these are the different ways you can think about like the commercial side of things. And you can see they do a good job in creating the angle shot. Like there's a perspective that they drawing you to. Whereas in the step, you see the bottle while surrounded by everything in nature itself. And you can see part of the heritage that's part of that. You see the wine up front, but it's focused on the bottle itself. Now, in the third shot, you can see that the that maybe the subject is the people. It's not just the bottle itself, but the bottle plays a very meticulous way in reflecting the brand value. So everything about the product is supposed to have a unique experience that people can have interacting with the brand itself. And so oftentimes when we think about that, it is understanding like, okay, if we're choosing minimalism, okay, how do we want to express it? Um, if we're choosing to like find a way to execute a brand, what are some of the ways that we can think about the product or the experiences? Also, oftentimes, while we talk about the logo, the color palette, the typography, the label, packaging, and illustration, or even the photography, we want to make sure that all of the components feel like it's not just more than the component that you're creating for your audience, but it's meant to build equity. It's meant to build a lot of real estate in people's head. So when we say brand equity, we don't mean how much percentage of your company is given over to the stakeholder, but really when we say equity, we mean brand equity, like how much real estate are we gonna have in people's head. So when we start to think about like how we create a brand, like it's not just about spending money in the visual component, but also thinking about like what is the experience that we want to create for people who interact with the brand. So oftentimes those are some of the ways that we can think of. I'm gonna stop for a second. Anybody got a question about that? About what I said so far about this particular brand or any brand I talk about so far? Okay, get that. No questions. Okay, cool. Um, so what trip I found is some of the things that we often find it's not just in the world of fine wine and spirit, but also like chasing like what some of the things that we experience is that universal to all brands. Some of the things that people trip over is really like choosing minimalism just because it's in, that's just a trend. Even your brand could be maximal or expressive or earthy, like what the brand we just showed. Um, Thinking your logo is your brand. Oftentimes, when we spend a lot of money on a logo that has no clarity on who your audience is, maybe it's not resonating with the audience. Um, so it's important to really understand your audience and trying to appeal to everyone what makes you forgettable to everybody. So one of the goals is like find your audience first. I've always tell people like before you create a brand, you should be having a model, a business model that is repeatable. So if your business model is repeatable, like you can repeat the process over and over and over and again, then at the very least you have a brand that you can work with. And from there you can build a brand identity. And then from there your audience is already connected to you because of the product that you showcase. Maybe you testing out your product to your friends and family, and then over time it becomes larger than those people. you're building equity in people's head. When we talk about equity, brand equity, over designing without clarity. Sometimes we can design too much. Sometimes less is more in the sense of how you're creating and who's it being created for. So both your visual and your voice need to match. Again, it really, in the world of branding, it's really about perspective. It's really about positioning. And most importantly, you're manipulating your positioning in people's head and how you can shift that. So oftentimes when you think about like how do you want to create a story? What type of story? Again, even brand story, that's a big part of how people think about brand identity or brand strategy. So always like look at it in that way. So what's the next pour forward? It's really just to think about like how branding is much more than just visual. There's emotional intentionality, strategy, thinking about like your purpose, your positioning and personality. So again, I show them brand like McBride Sisters, Sector Abysmal, two logos. Some of these brands, you can always look at them as example to really think about some of the how you can create your brand, how you can build your brand identity. And when it comes to just the wine industry or just fine wine and spirit in general, the product is really where it nails it home. And you always want to think about your brand story, which is part of the not only part of your brand strategy, but you can see your brand, your story inside of the brand visual. So really start to think about if there's a culture, if there's something in your childhood or in your adulthood that maybe you can resonate with it and pull and peel it back. There's so much emphasis on powers on what your backstory is. Like for myself, for me, it's like some of the brands that I have currently is like I don't know if you guys can see like a tequila in my hand, but essentially it's like really start to think about like how if you ever created a bottle or if you ever have a wine, like start to think about like how the packaging feel or the labeling instead of like I, for somebody that enjoy branding, I like to make sure that I can interact with the product itself. Okay, how does it smell? Like, okay, how does it look on the shelf? And even this brand, I've had this brand for a while, and I still haven't drank it, so um, don't judge me on this. But again, like this the packaging, like how do people interact with the packaging? Some people really, it's not just about like looking at the packaging for pure joy. This is like a French brand campaign. Some people you really collect product and let it sit on the shelf and let it age for a while and they become loyal to that. So maybe the experience is not just in tasting it, but also maybe you want to spend more money in the packaging for people that are interacting with the brand for the first time. Maybe you're shipping it directly, and in that packaging, you have like a thank you card. Like figure out what part of that experience that you're gonna create, like the brand promise that you have for your audience. Um, so these are some of the things that you can think about, like as you create your brand identity. Um, as of right now, I'm gonna like stop the floor for any question that people have. And you can unmute yourself if you want to be able to like have that conversation on what what we talk about. I see, Adrian, you mentioned when creating brand strategy, what method do you use to research your target market so that you develop components that best resonate with them? So some of the strategies that I always think about is um to testing out your market segment is really thinking about like what is a, a lot of what you talk about is revolve around business strategy. So in testing out your business strategy, you have to be able to make sure that it's repeatable. So if you have a product that is tailored to a group of people, from that you can create your brand strategy. Part of the component is we have the SWOT, the strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threat. You can think about like, okay, what are the strengths and the opportunity that this brand has? Again, brand is just although it is not, it can be adjacent to business. They are on opposite side of the coin. I always say, like, again, business is owned by the founder, CEO, but the brand is owned by the audience. So you should already have an audience before you even start to think about your brand identity. And I don't mean it need to be perfected. It just means that you have an ideal who come to you. Then you start to craft, okay, what the average person look like. This is where another method is it become very sexist, and that's okay. When it comes to marketing, marketing is very sexist. And I'll give you a good example of that. We talk about the wine industry being female dominated, and then the beer industry being male dominated. Look at all the commercials. You start to see like how the position the beer industry speak to the men. That at some point it could be wrong, sometimes it could be good, but that's just how marketing work or advertising to specific demographics. So by seeing that, okay, if I know that this group, this drink is appealed by people who are just not graduating, and word of mouth always travel through these people. This happened through repeating the business model over and over and over again. So by paying attention to your business model, you can extract information to create your brand strategy. Um, Again, we talk about your if you have a team that help produce your bottles, like what are they saying about working with you? Um, if you notice that people say certain words, like look at keyword that people are saying about your brand. Those keywords that they say about your brand give you certain signal. There's also archetypes. Think about the archetype. This is a very popular word. If you view archetype, it's heavily used for Disney. Disney it tends to be I believe the magician. Harley Davidson is viewed as the rebellious archetype. So each of these type of archetype speak to the type of personality. So Harley Davidson is you start to see a rebellious, rebel, rugged. Um, they question the status quo, etc. So those are some of the methods that really help. So there's no one method. There's various ways of how the gap that you see in your brand component that really resonate with the audience. But again, it goes back to understanding what your business model looks like, and if it's repeatable, you should have some sense of what your audience look like, and then create a profile for what that audience look like. Any other questions? You're welcome. Feel free if you want to come off the mic and really have like input, comment. Um, these are like conversations that I have continuously with other founders. Sometimes these are a lot of information. Um, it could definitely feel overwhelmed, but really start to figure out your positioning, your personality, and figure out those two things. Like it really helped to figure out like, okay, if I can figure out my personality, my just my positioning and my purpose, it gives you some confidence. And those some and especially your purpose and positioning, those things you can find in your business strategy. And your business strategy tends to inform in some decisions you make with your branding.
Hi, can I make a comment?
Yeah, go for it.
Well, maybe I think I'm still working on my strategy, but I
Hmm.
started a business.
Hmm.
It's not a wine brand. I'm doing wine apparel.
Okay.
And when you're saying find your audience, I just assumed anybody who drinks wine is my audience. But that's not necessarily true because
Hmm.
just because you drink wine doesn't mean you'd want to invest in like a wine themed hat or t-shirt or hoodie. So I
Hmm.
think maybe it's too broad, and
Hmm.
I'm not sure how to focus on who exactly is my audience. They're not just wine drinkers, they're, I don't know, travelers, they're
Hmm. I also think there's several angles you can look at it from. Figuring out, yes, to answer to from the first part, there's too many people to. If you're saying that everybody who drink wine is
yeah,
your audience, you're losing that battle already. So by figuring out like, okay, who do you want to have these t-shirts, or even who's getting these t-shirts? Maybe that's a collaboration with working with a brand, a wine brand that have their product out. So from there, you can start to create the collaboration with them, like a partnership. And through that connection, you can start to develop a target audience. Maybe it's somehow like, okay, you have to push out event, like work with a community event that do host the type of brand. And also ask yourself, like, are people there to drink wine or buy shirt? So that
exactly.
part yeah, so that part is sometimes you have to figure out like what do you want to do? You want to sell the product or come with to look at the sale funnel. Like when do people buy shirt? That's usually after they have a commitment to the product or the service itself, which is the wine itself. So in that case, it not to say it's not possible, but you have to create relationship from that standpoint with your customer first. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess to me, I think that would be harder because
Mm.
I wine brand. So I'm not in the US, I'm in Canada, and
Okay.
I'm in Toronto, and there's not a lot of wine brands here. They're all in Niagara, and they're not sort
Mm.
of as big, and they're not really open to that kind of partnership. They're just more focused on wine. They're not interested in apparel because I have talked to some. And I
Mm-hmm.
do find the customers that I have, it's more they buy their shirts and hats because it's relatable, sort of like
Mm-hmm.
clever saying something that people relate to.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I'm trying to find more of those people, and I'm trying to figure out where those people are. So if I go to like like a wine event,
Mm-hmm.
I do find those people in person. So it's like
Okay.
that are coming to like a wine festival. So I have a couple of friends that are wine agents. They
Mm-hmm.
have like a little, hey, I'm showing my portfolio. I come there with my stuff, and people are very interested and they buy. But so it's like going outward from doing markets, it's like where else would I find people like
Okay.
even like online?
Mm-hmm. I think you already found a nugget of your target audience. Your target audience are going to be at event. And so, are you collecting information when you at events? Like, do you have like a survey or a list of questions that you ask when people purchase? So
Yeah.
that's where you can collect data, information.
Okay.
Oh, where are you from? Like, oh, what age? Oh, thank you for, or even when they purchase your product, you can have like a questionnaire for them to fill out. So be comfortable with asking for information so you can gather it. That's already a nugget. You already have success that and again, that's also another part of your audience.
Okay.
We have wine agents. So you're creating an audience right there. Your wine agents are part of that. So
Okay.
it might be a little bit harder to do it online if people haven't interact with your product. So your bread and butter is going to be in person. So you should start from there.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else have questions? I know it's 9 o'clock. I probably could have like one or two more questions. So again, for those who probably have questions, you can. I am offering a free mini brand audit for 3 founders that really have that figuring out the business model or trying to actually figure out what opportunity in their visual identity or their story alignment or start to think about their self presence. And so you can give yourself like 2 to 3 areas to focus on to build out your brand moving forward. It's not just a brand strategy, brand design, and like start to think about what that brand will look like for you. So again, for those who are interested, it's only limited to 3 brand only. You can have this is where you can find me on not only on LinkedIn. You can scan the QR code. They have my IGs. Again, I will be posting a lot more of these moving forward. There's a lot more that I also do. Again, just a little bit of introduction what I do. I literally work with a lot of startups that look like us, but also like visionary startups that really have a goals that connect community, environments, spaces that celebrate what we do and how do we want to impact. So feel free if anybody have questions, my email's in there, my IG, my LinkedIn, feel free to add my name, Nekwan Luke. You can find me on IG and so many other places. But if there's no other questions, I would say everybody have a great Tuesday. But other than that, if anybody have questions, feel free to chime in. Nope. Thank you guys. Really appreciate it. Feel free to hit me up if there are any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem.